Oh my God, I was wrong. It was Earth all along. She finally made a monkey. Yes, they finally made a monkey. Yes, she finally made a monkey out of me.
I love you, Dr. Zaius.
There we go. Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, with special guests Tim Davis and Justin Fontaine.
Yep.
This is the podcast where all four of us went and saw a movie at our local Regal Cinema Theater in Laurel. Shout out to the Laurel Theater, because you still exist for us to enjoy for now. And this is the podcast where we're going to review a movie. We are in the parking structure right next to the movie theater. We're going to give our gut reactions, and we're going to try to answer some questions like, should you see this movie? Should you not see this movie? Should you bring a date? Can you bring your kids? Should you snack? Should you nap? Should you craft during the movie? We're going to go through all that, or maybe only a little of that. You know, whatever we can get to, because we're all busy people, and it's already kind of late. I am Todd Domer.
And I'm Matt Malloy. And yes, welcome to another episode. We saw a movie. This movie is called, let me see if I get this right, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
Correct.
Yes. Awesome start to the podcast.
You got the name of the
title
movie, right?
of the movie correct.
It does help.
Yes. So we'll find out what all this is about and what everyone thinks. But first, Tim, is there anyone in this movie besides monkeys that we should know about?
That's the thing. The human presence in this is not very deep, and I would say as far as household names, you really don't have any. And the most recognizable actor shows up in the middle, William H. Macy, who had quite the run of movies and TV shows in, I'd say, late 90s and 2000s. But he shows up as one of the surviving humans, but there are not many in this movie. But I didn't recognize any of the other names in this, or voices, or voice actors, whatever you want to call them, motion capture people. So this is a completely new entry in the franchise with new characters. So that's all I got.
Yes. Okay. So what's this movie all about? Well, it's about a world where apes have become speakers of English and able to learn things much more than apes in our world can learn. And humans have become stupid and unable to speak,
Primitive, I guess.
and unable to do things that we can do in our world. So it's a bit of a role reversal when you think about those two things, but that's the world that Planet of the Apes lives in, and this movie is no exception to that. What happens in the movie? Well, we join the Eagle Clan, a clan of apes who train eagles, and we learn a lot about their day-to-day life and their culture and rituals. And then they come into some conflict with another clan who is really into like Roman history. And they capture the Eagle Clan and take them, with the exception of our main character, Noah, who escapes capture and goes on a journey to find the rest of his clan, meeting up with other folks along the way, including one human. The main human in this movie, I would say. Yeah. Her name is May, we find out at some point. And so then we get to where the magic happens. After this journey, we come to the kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is ruled over by someone named Caesar, an ape named Caesar. Not to be confused with the ape named Caesar from the previous versions of this movie. It's a different one, and this takes place.
The name.
Yes.
So he goes
his
by
name is Proximus.
Proximus Caesar.
Proximus Caesar, right? That's
Because
true.
he's Caesar's proxy.
Yes,
Or at
good,
least
good,
Caesar.
Justin. And so so then there's a big showdown about they're trying to get into this vault, and that's kind of the end of game mechanics there. So I won't reveal any more about what happens, other than that there's a big showdown between the Eagle Clan and the Proximus Caesar and his goons. And so that's what I'll say about that. I feel like I used this joke before, but what does your ape mind tell you about this movie, Todd? What is your gut reaction to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes?
Well, there were certainly some problems with this movie that are keeping me from giving it like a great score. It's probably going to get a middle of the road, maybe a little bit higher score. And some of it is like this movie is very like expansive. Like stuff just keeps getting bigger and bigger as you go through the movie. And while some storylines are somewhat wrapped up, some are not, and obviously they're building to another franchise, which is, I was kind of hoping this would be a one-off, but it certainly is not, unless it does really horribly. So, there's the good things that I would like to mention is I think all the voice acting is great. What I love about these movies is that instead of like in the originals where it was just like people in masks and they just talked regularly, this franchise and the three that became before this movie has kept to the fact that the apes are still apes. Like that they talk, their talk is rough, their movements are like ape-like. And that's what I've really like enjoyed about these movies. So on that kind of front, that delivered like I expected.
And they make plenty of ape noises.
Yeah, even when they're on stealthy missions, they can't help they're still screaming out ape noises. But the I would say this one has the weaker storyline of the original trilogy of recent years, because it rehashes some of the same notes that we've been on for the first three movies, which is like, can humans and apes coexist? Like, oh, apes shouldn't turn on other apes. But it's like every movie is that. Like, so they haven't really like... I mean, this is the first one that's kind of set in the future where the world is basically taken over by like, greenage. And so that's all interesting to see. But as far as storyline and stuff, they just fell on old plots. And then they just kind of tried to throw some stingers there at the end that would make you want to come back for the next one. And I probably will come back, but it just wasn't... I don't think it was a strong outing. Like, I don't think it was horrible. But I just thought there was nothing really new that we saw in this movie. Like, that was... And that was kind of sad. I thought they were going to, like, go for something crazy and wild, and they really didn't. They kept it kind of... They played it safe. Like, I think I wanted this movie just to be weird and out there. And it kind of... You just got a rehash of the first three movies, in my opinion. So, that brings it down a fair amount. But otherwise, voice acting on point, CGI on point. All that stuff is great. All that stuff looks stellar, I think. But it just wasn't backed up. It had strong performances in it, but it was overall, I think, the story that was too many rehashed elements that we've already, because this is the 10th movie, right?
10th or
yes.
9th? Yes.
This is the 10th movie, because there's the original 5, then there's the Tim Burton, then there's the 3.
Yes.
So this is the 10th movie. Yep. And it just still, like, for 10 movies... If you've got to dip so hard in what has already been done, then you're not taking this in new and great places, in my opinion. So they did some stuff that gets you, okay, well, I can see where this is going in the future, but it just wasn't strong enough to me. It wasn't crazy enough for my liking. I wanted to get back to some form of space time travel, Charlton Heston stuff, but it just didn't happen. So I'm disappointed in that. Fontaine, what'd you think of this little ditty?
I'm going to say I agree with a lot of the points you brought out, Todd. I feel they were the same. I think this movie was the weakest out of the now 4 new ones, just going off those. It's just felt railroaded. Like, at no point did I feel suspense. At no point was I questioning, are our intrepid heroes going to make it? They have so much stacked against them. It literally was moved to A, to B, to C, and credits. That's what it felt like to me. Which was bad, because there's a lot of, characters they try to introduce. I was like, all right, cool. I want to learn more about them. I want to learn more about the Eagle Tribe. I generally loved Proximus's design. I thought his, just general attitude and the way he looked, I was like, I really like this. I want to learn more of you. Movie was what it was. Again, thought it was the weakest of them, and Todd, like you said, I agree with a lot of your points.
Sweet. Tim?
Yeah, I'm also torn about this. I had only recently seen the new trilogy in the last couple months because I knew I had to catch up just to see this one. But really, the connection is not that strong to the last few. I mean, yes, Caesar like almost looms over this one in a way, and they were trying to adopt that and own it. That like Caesar was the key character of the first three movies, and his legacy is like what we're gonna build off of. But the problem was, it kept reminding you how much more an interesting character Caesar was,
Yeah.
and these guys were not, unfortunately, and they had to be taught what Caesar was about, or were learning even as the movie went along. But we, as the audience, already know all that. So we were a step ahead of the characters pretty much the whole way, and that doesn't always help a movie get along. Now, going back to what Todd said, as far as like, I don't think this is a bad movie by any means. The visuals were fantastic. All the CG acting, and I mean they've mastered that art. Like that these movies, as far as visuals go, are fantastic. And I really, like you said, the greenage, the foliage, making Earth look like it was maybe hundreds of years later, where cities are grown over, and it looked like though every wide shot they did, I was just looking at details, and that was like that stuff looked great. And like you said, all these unknown actors, as far as I know, like all nailed the parts as much as you can act when you're motion captured and all that, and then the way they mapped the apes to them, like that's all great stuff, and it's like getting better with each movie. So that's all great. So if you like seeing how these movies progress, this one visually is still remarkable. And I would agree it is a theater experience because it's just the visuals, especially when the wide shots when they are traversing the country, are fantastic. But again, yeah, the story beats are clearly setting up a world. There's a lot of world building in this as well, and that's fine if their plan is to make a couple more of these. But like you guys said, like the hook isn't as strong as it could have been. And it's like we were led to believe, and I won't go into spoilers too much, but like that most of the humans have been wiped out, and that they're not smart anymore. This movie liked to throw a lot of curveballs at that, and it's like, well, huh? So like now maybe they have a plan to explain that, but we'll see. I don't know if it's as hooking as they think it is. But again, like I don't think this is a bad movie. I'm with Todd. It'll be in the middle range just because of the visual appeal of it. The acting and all that, and like there's still enough intrigue on my part to be like, okay, I'll see the next one, but it's not as gripping because Caesar, the character, was the driving force in this whole franchise, and his looming over this, I felt, was more of a detraction than it was a positive story note. Matt?
Yeah, so I had an interesting thought while you were talking, Tim, about the idea of Caesar as a really interesting character who is not present in the movie, really, except by
dialogue,
by proxy. But I think if you're setting up a trilogy, you have the potential in the main character here, Noah, of developing Noah into that really interesting character throughout the trilogy.
Oh, and that's probably the goal. I agree with you. Yes.
And that maybe is a little bit more of a hook into why to continue watching it.
Yeah,
among other
that's
things.
Fair. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. That the visuals are excellent, and the acting, the voice acting is very good too. My main problem with this was the pacing. I really felt like it dragged a lot for me.
The world building was very expansive.
It was, and the journey to get to the kingdom of the Planet of the Apes was very drawn out, very slow, very taking its time. Even though there was a sense of urgency by Noah to get there.
Yeah, I think all in all, we only spent probably like 25 minutes in the kingdom of the Planet of the
think
Apes.
that's fair.
Right. So
Definitely a journey movie.
yeah, that was a detractor for me. I did think that the ending was interesting enough to kind of pull this out of the dumpster.
Yeah, I sat up a little bit more there at the end too.
And I did get hooked a little bit by one of the stingers, as you put it, Todd. I really want to see what happens with the human element in future
Sure.
movies. Because they set that up for like a, kind of definitely more of a part to play in future films. So overall, I would say I enjoyed my experience. One thing you said, Justin, that really resonates with me is that the plot was very color by numbers. It was A to B to C, and you could see most of it coming. Maybe not all of it, but for the most part, you knew where we were going, and I think that's a weakness. I agree with that is a weakness. But overall, I think, like I said, I enjoyed it enough. Wasn't great, except for the visual effects, but good enough to say, yeah, you could watch this. So that's where I'm going to end up.
Yeah, another thing I want to bring up, I feel like I haven't really seen the original, so Todd can speak to this more. But I feel like the newer franchise, they were really good about layering the story with like story elements, like, and overall themes, like, you know, like even as apes grow into a smarter society, they fall into the same pitfalls as humans. Like, you know, some have pride, some have, you know, are more vengeful, and there's always a divide, just like there would be when humans rise up. But I thought they always played that well into the story without knocking you over the head with it. This one was not subtle about its whole like religion being perverted theme, which is kind of what this was going for, about how Caesar is this legacy, and some people use his, you know, his methods or the way he lived to guide their life as far as being good people, good apes, and all that. And then, but then you have your cult almost that this kingdom has become, of your radicalizing his teachings and turning it into a selfish way of running things and controlling people. And it's like, but it was not subtle. And it's like what I usually like about the other Planet of the Apes movies. It was there, and it was interesting, but it was done through action and words from Caesar, as opposed to just, here's this big point we're trying to make. So I thought that was a detractor too. And Todd, you could probably speak to more about the original ones, what they were trying to do.
Yeah, I mean, there really wasn't much Caesar in the original. So,
Yeah, but okay.
So if I'm right, it's been a long time since I've seen all those
Sure,
movies.
okay.
Basically, like, so the start of the third Planet of the Apes movie is the woman and the man ape that helped Charlton Heston from the first one found his spacecraft and rebuilt it and went up into space, and then they crashed down to Earth, like, and then their son, because she was pregnant, is named Caesar, and so they die somehow. I think there's some fighting along, and then he grows up in a circus and doesn't show anyone that he can speak, and then he kind of starts the revolution of apes
Interesting.
speaking.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. But, but were those movies like also trying to hit the themes thing? I get the idea that was a thing of these movies was.
No, the original ones were more. They weren't like. I don't think they were more like religious type. I mean, well,
Okay.
actually, you know what? 2 is very much, because
Okay.
2 is the discovery of humans living underground that have been worshiping an atomic bomb.
Okay. Yeah.
All these years, and the radiation from the atomic bomb has changed them,
As you do.
as you do.
Sure. Okay.
So.
Yeah, gotcha.
But anyway,
Yes.
the reason, I mean, if anyone out there is listening to the podcast, you want to talk about the original Planet of the Apes, let's get together and talk about it,
Yeah.
because I'll talk about it all day long. But let's get down to why people typically listen to this podcast. How many? We're just gonna go plain and simple. How many eagles would you give this movie? 0 being the worst, because then you have none, and you're not an eagle master with 0 eagles. But then 5's the best, because then you are a master if you have all 5. That's how I choose to believe it. That's how I choose to believe they dealt with that in the movie. If you had 5, you were the eagle master. So, Matt?
I'm going to go with 2.9 eagles out of 5. This was slightly above average for me. I did enjoy the movie enough to say I recommend, and there was enough good things that I can give it an above average score, but only a little bit. So that's me, 2.9.
Fair. Fontaine?
This movie was no Donkey Kong. It was Donkey Wrong.
Ooh.
I'm going to give it 2 eagles.
Two. Yes.
2 eagles and a witty line. Tim?
Yeah, like so. I would say the most recent trilogy. I did not like Rise, the first one. So that was probably about a 2 for me. But Dawn and War were easily in the upper 3s. I think we're back in the 2s here with Kingdom, and I have it at but still above average. I think the visuals and the potential world building is enough. So I bump it just above it at 2.6 to be worthy of seeing, especially in the theater.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think the thing that's holding me back of giving this a better score is that I just feel like there's so many elements of the newer trilogy just kind of rehashed in this one.
Yeah.
But there were I thought there were some clever callbacks to the original Planet of the Apes that I liked. But I think if they had done My Crazy Story, I would have been way more in. So if you want to know what that crazy story is, you have to contact me on Facebook or through the podcast here, and I'll tell you. But no one ever does that, so I don't expect to hear from any of you. I'm going to give it a 2.7. I think if it was, technically to me, we just got the 4th movie in a row of can apes trust humans? Can humans trust apes? Can humans trust humans? Can apes trust apes? The
same thing.
4th movie in a row of that kind of stuff going on. Even though they did it in a different way that's never been done, it's still rehashing the same themes. So hopefully, if this is just maybe this is just a slow start for this franchise, and the next one will blow my mind.
Look at it as a part 1.
Yeah, it's so obviously a part 1. Yeah, it's so obviously.
You still got to make part 1 really good.
Which makes it worse if it doesn't get the part 2 and 3.
I agree.
Right?
With that.
Yeah, if it doesn't do well enough and they don't do another one, then it's like,
Yeah,
well,
I will retract all eagles if that happens.
Yes, correct. That's fair.
So.
Well, any other thoughts before we wrap it up?
I told Fontaine in the theater, but I don't know if you guys heard that there was that scene where, I don't know if it was a human or an ape picks up the girl doll and it says "Mama."
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a straight callback from the original.
Okay.
Apes.
No, I didn't know that. That's
Yeah.
nice. Okay.
So now, listeners, if you go see it, you'll know that too, and you'll go, "Oh, that thing."
Yes.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, before we wrap up, I have an exciting news about a new feature of our podcast
Whoa.
that has just been activated recently, and that is you have the ability to text us if you're listening. If you listen to this podcast on a phone device, there should be a link with the podcast now that you can click on the link and text us, and we'll get the message from your phone. So let me know if you see that. I don't know. I know if you go directly to Buzzsprout, which is our hosting service, it will definitely be there. I'm interested to see what it looks like at other services. But if you see that link, click on it and text us and let us know how it worked for you, because I think it's cool.
Did we get an email about that, or
We did.
did I just not read the email?
Seems like
Probably.
Probably.
But
And that's
had
your
to
reaction.
Cheerio.
I had
That's
to
your reaction to it.
turn it
Yeah.
on. But I turned it on.
So
So anyway.
next time I gotta read my email. There it is. Yeah.
So
That guy's feeling it.
that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Matt and Todd Go to the Movies, where we reviewed the movie Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And we gave it a above average rating by the slimmest of margins, a 2.55 Eagles out of 5.
Right up.
So not super great, but still I think we overall recommend that you'd see it maybe. And I agree, if you're going to go see it in the theater, because it's pretty to look at, if nothing else. And yeah, thank you for listening, for subscribing, for downloading the old podcast. Please continue to do these things, and we will see you next time.
Da 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 da
Da da
da da da.
da da da.